This is section 4.2 of AP Microeconomics. Let's get started. So previously we've talked about imperfect competition, and there are three market structures within perfect competition. The first one, the most important one, is monopoly. With a monopoly, here's some characteristics you need to know, most notably being only one firm in the market. There's no market curve because the market is the demand. Monopolies also have that pricing power. And remember that monopolies are also not efficient, hence what makes them part of imperfect competition. The short run is the long run because there is no firms entering or exiting in the monopoly market. So the ATC curve will always be the long run curve. Now, once again, just a reminder that the marginal revenue curve does split from the demand curve, and that's because in order to sell one more unit, the firms must lower the price on items that could have been sold at higher prices. Okay, we've addressed that in the first section. Now, a couple things to note. It is likely you're going to be asked to graph a monopoly graph showing profits or losses. So you need to know what that looks like. More specifically, you need to know the formulas. So if your price is greater than your average total cost, you earn economic profits. If your price is less than your average total cost, you earn losses. Obviously, if they're equal, it would be normal profit. So with regards to the tables for showing revenues, quantity, and price, you can see the difference between perfect competition and monopoly. You could tell this would be perfect competition on the test, even if they didn't tell you, because the price is the same and the marginal revenue is the same. You could also tell this would be imperfect competition. In this case, we're talking about monopoly, because the price has to fall in order for you to sell more, which of course hurts your marginal revenue. Now, there are a few specific formulas you need to know about the monopoly graph. First, you need to know the profit maximizing price and quantity. That is always where MR equals MC, which is noted by this blue line. MR equals MC. Price does go up to the demand curve. Okay, they have market power. Do not draw the price horizontally here. Continue to go to the demand curve, and then you set your price. For a socially optimal quantity, also known as the allocatively efficient point, that is where the price equals marginal cost. Now, where would that be on the graph? The shortcut is it's where the demand curve intersects the marginal cost curve, which would be this orange line right here. That is your socially optimal quantity. That is what's best for society, where you maximize the welfare. The next is the normal profit quantity, also known as a fair return. They will interchange those words. That is where the price is equal to the average total cost. Well, how do you find that? It's where your demand curve intersects your average total cost curve. So you intersect here. Here's your price, which is also your ATC, so you'd be earning zero economic profits. Last but not least is the revenue maximizing quantity. That is where MR equals zero. That is this red line. Okay, if you think back to earlier in the semester, where do you maximize utility? When the marginal utility is zero. Think about a previous unit recently, unit 3. When do you maximize total product as a firm? When marginal product is zero. Well, where do you maximize total revenue? When marginal revenue is zero. So that'd be right here. Now notice this goes beyond the demand curve. Why did I do that? This line tells you where the unit elastic quantity is on the demand curve. Remember back in unit 2 that the demand curve was split into elasticities. Higher prices are elastic, lower prices are inelastic, but where exactly is that fine line? It's where the MR equals zero. So that is where unit elastic is. Okay. Now, I'm not going to go through every one of these. You can pause the video and take a look at all these. But these are all the things you need to know about the graph, such as, let's go through a couple. The total revenue. Well, if we're at the profit maximizing quantity, which is right here, this would be your price. So this rectangle, AJEO, no specific order, would be your total revenue. Where's your profit? Well, at this quantity, where's your price? Right here. At this quantity, where does it hit the ATC curve? Right here at H. So your profits would be AJHS, that nice rectangle right there. Anything below the ATC would be your total costs. Okay, so it'd be SHE0 would be your total cost because it's price times your average total cost. Okay. Deadweight loss, well, if this is your profit maximizing quantity and this, letter M, is your socially optimal quantity, whatever's in the middle is your deadweight loss because that is an area where you could earn more welfare, but you're not. So this JNG would be your deadweight loss. RAJ would be consumer surplus. Consumer surplus is the difference between the maximum price you would pay, which is demand line, and the price you did pay, which is this. So, and then these also include some of the other formulas as well that we just talked about. Another thing to note here is I've added in productive efficiency. Well, it's not something that's commonly assessed in the AP exam. Productive efficiency just means you're producing at your minimum average total cost, which would be right here at L. So if you were producing at a quantity of L, you could see your ATC would hit the minimum. Okay. Last few things to know about this monopoly section is you need to know differences between monopolies and perfect competition. For instance, monopolies always underproduce, and that's how they keep the prices high. So monopolies have higher prices and less output. That makes sense. Productively efficient, you might say, well, why is it producing here? Well, because in perfect competition, perfectly competitive firms are always allocatively efficient, which means they will be producing where their price is equal to their marginal cost, which would have been here. Now, monopolies earn long-run profits, as you can see, and of course, perfect competition does not earn profits in the long run. So just a couple key differences to note. The most notable being that monopolies produce less and they charge higher prices. The last thing to know about the monopoly section is the key features of a natural monopoly. The College Board does not get granular about this. Okay, natural monopolies are monopolies that are essentially built through organic growth. They're not monopolies that were created through mergers or acquisitions, and they have a key feature called economies of scale. That's the most important thing you need to know. Let's think back to our previous unit. What is economies of scale? That means as firms get larger, their long-run average total cost falls. So if a natural monopoly exists, then they are going to be producing anywhere on the downward sloping part of their ATC curve. That is it. Don't worry about anything else. Now, do regular monopolies, can they have economies of scale? Sure. Just because you have economies of scale does not mean you're a natural monopoly. But natural monopolies do all have economies of scale. Okay. Also, one thing to note, you'll see a lot of graphs with a horizontal marginal cost curve that might throw you off a little bit. It shouldn't, but it's unusual because we're used to the check mark for marginal cost. Well, that is because natural monopolies, as I've noted here, often have very high fixed costs of infrastructure. Think about utility companies. Most of their costs are in their fixed costs, not their variable costs. So with such a low variable cost, their marginal cost would just be very minimal at that point and be a constant rate of change. Okay. Well, that's it for monopolies. Hope that was helpful.